morning. Last show of the year. Let's do it.
It's the morning.
I'm Dan Graziano in for Greeny. I got Orlovsky. I got Ryan Clark. I got Tannenbaum. We're here to break it down on a Football Friday, and we start with our game of the night.
Look at 15.
Jets and Browns.
It's cool. I mean, just put yourself in that position. I mean, you can't deny it. It's you know, I said it from the very beginning. I mean, the city's been unbelievable. My teammates have been unbelievable, like in terms of just embracing me onto this football team. So it's all been great.
He was on his couch a month ago. First player in NFL history now to have at least 250 passing yards and multiple passing touchdowns in each of his first 5 games with a franchise. In his 5 games with Cleveland, he's thrown more touchdown passes than the Steelers, Titans, and Jets have this season. Yes,
good?
Right.
The Steelers suck.
It's unbelievable what they're doing because they were 31st in offense before he took over.
Yeah.
It's the improvement that he has led this team that is unbelievable.
That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, but when you look at their 3 offensive tackles are out, Nick Chubb is out, and they're on the precipice of maybe having a shot at the 1 seed or making real noise in the playoffs. It's unbelievable what Joe Flacco's doing.
It's 26% of their salary cap, right? Is on IR.
Yep.
Yeah. They're 11-5. And they're going to the playoffs. They can still get, if things break the right way, the 1 seed in the AFC. So whether they do that or not, they're in the playoffs. If you're looking at that playoff field, are they a team that you're eager to play?
Oh, absolutely not. They're a Super Bowl contender, legitimate Super Bowl contender. I think the only team in the AFC that you feel confident or that you don't feel confident that they can beat is probably Baltimore. Baltimore can run it on them. But because of the way that Joe is playing, because of the way that this defense, this is one of the, if not the best back sevens in all of football, the way that Jim Schwartz has designed it, and the way that this offense now, that Joe Flacco and Kevin Stefanski are on the same page. Hey, here's the real AFC situation. If you're in the AFC, you'd rather play Kansas City than Cleveland.
You'd rather play Kansas City in the playoffs than Cleveland.
Absolutely.
Well, Cleveland's 2 games better, or a game and a half better in the standings than Kansas City, so it's not
the way that this team in totality is playing, you would rather play Kansas City right now than you would rather play Cleveland, because in the 1 through 53, playing much more consistent football.
And Daniel didn't want to say it, at least right now, because it's a different conversation. This is the best quarterback play Cleveland has had in the last 2 years. And that includes Deshaun Watson, who was brought over with a fully guaranteed contract. Now, let's think about why. When Kevin Stefanski was brought in, you would hear names like Kirk Cousins. It's why you thought it would work with a guy like Baker Mayfield, because he doesn't necessarily need the dual threat quarterback. He's the guy that wants to run the football, get into play action, be able to take shots, and also have a quarterback that can distribute the football accurately. That's what Joe Flacco has done. And then on the other side of that, Joe Flacco has gone above and beyond the X's and O's, doing some things that we didn't necessarily expect young Joe Flacco to do that he's able to do now. And we know that he has that mentality that he's going to continue to push the football down the field, but it's been the accuracy and the connection that they didn't have early on in the season. And so the other piece of this is this. Joe Flacco playing with house money.
No doubt.
Joe Flacco knows what it's like to not have this game. See, a lot of us, once we lose it, we go into something else, right? When football was over for me, when I walked away from it, I walked into TV. And so every day I realized what I had, but I can't go do it again.
Right.
I don't get that opportunity to walk into a locker room with that perspective, still with an ability to play this game. Joe Flacco does. He is playing this game with pure joy. He's also playing this game with no thought about what this does to his legacy, what people are going to think of him if he doesn't succeed, because he knows that this is an opportunity that has been gifted to him. And I love the way that he's approached it. I love the way this team has embraced him, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. To me, the Cleveland Browns are the scariest team outside of the Baltimore Ravens.
You know what struck me? Like, we talk about Watson being hurt. They're on their 4th quarterback. They lost both starting tackles. They lost Nick Chubb. They didn't have Amari Cooper last night. They're playing against a team that lost its quarterback on the 4th play of the season and just doesn't seem to have embraced the challenge the same way.
It's been so disappointing on the other side of the ball. I mean, here's a team that could have had Joe Flacco, had a good defense.
They did.
And last night, it just didn't look nearly as competitive. But, Dan, going back to what RC said, going back to the Browns for a second, They really remind me of the Tom Brady Buccaneers from this standpoint. They can play lights out defense, playoff Lenny. You got Jerome Ford, and you have a quarterback who's really close to the end of his career that can get the ball down the field. And if the four of us are having a conversation in a month, guys, and we're talking about a surprise team in the playoffs, the Cleveland Browns have every indice of a team that could do that.
Yeah, the only team that they had played that I would sit here and say unquestionably believe that should win the game would be Baltimore. They can go beat anybody in the AFC.
And they beat Baltimore this year.
And I think to RC's point with the play in the house money, so you watch it with Joe's play. Like, you watch him be, some of the throws he made to Njoku last night on the crossing routes, part of that is because he loves this offense. This is the offense that he was in with Gary Kubiak in Baltimore when he was playing really good.
Sure.
Part of that is because he knows this defense is unbelievable. And if he throws a pick or two, this defense more often than not is going to bail him out. You saw it with the Hickman pick six last time. To put into context, we've talked about the IR and the percentage of people. One, probably going to win Coach of the Year, Kevin Stefanski.
Probably.
Joe Flacco has now played himself very much so in the conversation for comeback player of the year. They probably have Myles Garrett as defensive player of the year. And Jim Schwartz could be assistant coach of the year.
Add it all up, and you have a legitimate AFC contender, which for the vast majority of their existence, the Browns have not been. But this year could be different. Next up in the NFL, let's go to the NFC, where we have a Saturday night showdown tomorrow. The Cowboys hosting the Lions in a game ABC and ESPN. This is what is at stake in that game. The Lions could tie a franchise record with their 12th win of the season. They're also still in the mix for the #1 overall seed in the NFC if they can keep up with the 49ers, right? The Cowboys are looking to complete a perfect season at home and to keep the pressure on the Eagles for the NFC East title. So the Cowboys back at home, but they have lost 2 in a row, both on the road. So if you're watching this tomorrow night, which I assume everyone will on ABC and ESPN, Mike T, what are you looking to see from the Cowboys that'll make you feel differently about them as they head toward the playoffs?
Keep playing well on offense. This is not about home and road, guys. Miami, give them all the credit in the world. They had a great last drive last week. If they didn't complete that drive, we'd be talking about Dak Prescott as an MVP candidate. Dallas is great with the lead. That's what they do best on defense. Rush the passer, turn the ball over. They could do that at home. They could do that away. But if Detroit can run the ball, it's going to be a different game. But the best way to help this Dallas Cowboy defense is to have Dak Prescott and that offense continue to play at a high level. And if we take away some of the noise around their defense, guys, Dak is as good as any quarterback right now in the league.
Yeah, Dak's playing really good. You got to start telling the truth about the Cowboys, though. It is about home and road. Like, they're 0-6 the last 6 road games versus winning teams. So we can't pretend that that's not a real thing.
They went on the road last year in the playoffs and won a game.
It was
Against
against
the
that
team
team
that
with a
had a
losing
losing
record.
record.
It's the playoffs. It's the play.
Start telling the truth.
I didn't love the way the Dans jumped on you just now, though. I thought that was bordering on a little malicious.
Thank you. And that was bordering on pandering. What do you think about the Cowboys?
So we keep talking about the Cowboys offense and the fact that they don't score on the road as they do at home. Has anybody ever looked at the defense to think about why the Cowboys don't score on the road like they do at home?
Okay.
It's easier to score plus 30 points against the Philadelphia Eagles when you create 3 turnovers on forced fumbles. It's easier to score 30 points when Deron Bland is scoring touchdowns because he's picking off footballs and running them into the end zone. When this defense doesn't play in a way to create those turnovers, the Dallas Cowboys obviously don't get the short fields. They don't get the numbers of possessions that they normally get. This defense is different on the road than it is at home. This defense has gotten bludgeoned on the road as opposed to what it's gotten at home. And it's like anything else, right? When I was young, right, I used to fight this kid on my street named Jericho every week.
Jericho,
right? Jericho just wanted to fight, and he was one of those tough kids that didn't matter how many times you beat him up, he thought he was going to win the next fight. Okay. What I always wanted to do was fight Jericho in front of my house. Why? Because my mom would come outside. You ain't finna whip me in front of my mama. Now, you catch me on one of the back streets and it ain't really my day, it might be a tie. But if we fought in front of the house, in front of my mom, Jericho, you got to catch these hands. That's what the Dallas Cowboys defense is. When they play at home, when they have that momentum, when they're excited, when you have the crowd noise, that's a team that creates turnovers. That's a team that gives the football back to their offense in positions to score. On the road, when they fighting Jericho on the back street, walking from Ellender, it's a crapshoot.
Couple things. One, I don't want to
unpack there.
I don't want to fight you. I don't ever want to
Anywhere
fight
in
you.
front of anybody's house.
Pat, did you ever lose to Jericho?
Yeah, Jericho beat me up
got
before,
you,
too.
You got
He
you
beat
up a
me
couple times?
Jericho was tough.
Where's the win-loss record? You got him. Yeah. Here's my thing with this game. I think the NFC Championship and Super Bowl is on the line. I honestly do. The Cowboys are not going to go on the road for 2 or 3 games to get to the NFC title and or the Super Bowl. And I want to see, can they win a game when it comes to physicality? This is the best offensive line that they have played this season. Detroit's offensive line. This game will be determined in the first quarter. If they don't control this game in the first quarter, Detroit will run the ball 50 times down their throats.
You got to remember, too, Philadelphia was moving the football early on the ground against the Dallas Cowboys before the punch-out. And so it's not about, to me, necessarily home and road in that sense, but it's about the way the teams approach them from a physicality standpoint in the run game.
We're going to have a lot more on this game later, including picks. We were going to do picks now, but Jericho's is not in yet, so we got to get that. And
The Jets not there.
Hey, we're back on Get Up. We're heading to Kansas City, where it has been the worst season of Patrick Mahomes' career so far. Ball security has been an issue. He's thrown 14 interceptions. That is the most in a single season in his career. His pass catchers haven't exactly helped him out, though. They've dropped a league-high 34 passes. 34 to be exact, without even accounting for yards after the catch. That has resulted in 335 yards of potential offense lost. All of this has resulted in the Chiefs' offense being, well, not quite as good as we're used to seeing. They've scored under 20 points in 7 games this season. They did that in 6 games combined over Mahomes' first 5 seasons as a starter. On Wednesday, it's Travis Kelce on his podcast.
He wanted to see the fire in me, and I reacted in a bad way. He wanted to just get the best out of me. And right now, I'm just not playing my best football, and I got to lock the in and be more accountable for him, be more accountable for my teammates. I got to keep my cool, man. It's not just one guy. It's not just me playing like dog shit. Not just us not being able to get the run game going. It's not just us not being on the same page passing wise. Everybody's in this thing together. Everybody at some point isn't being accountable. Everybody's just got to do their job.
I said it. I don't know if Dan was on that day. I questioned. I was like, is Travis Kelce the same?
I was with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, when I did it at that point, it was extremely early on in the season, but everyone was talking about the other pass catchers, and I was saying that Travis Kelce is no longer playing at a level that scares you defensively. And from that point, he started to drop the football. He started to become less reliable. And it's not piling on what he said, because he just showed the sort of accountability you expect from a first ballot Hall of Famer. But when Travis Kelce isn't quite what he's always been throughout Patrick Mahomes' career, Matt Nagy has to do something different. Matt Nagy has to get creative. Andy Reid has to get creative. And it's going to start to have to be a question of who's to blame for what's going on in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody leaves Kansas City and gets a head coaching job, right? Everybody but Eric Bieniemy. All of those guys have done that. Eric Bieniemy leaves, and now there are some things that are different inside that building. And talking to Alex Smith, he said something to me that was extremely that stuck out to me, because he said, Andy Reid is the most patient coach I've ever been with. He said, but when you have somebody like Eric in the building, right, he's someone that holds everybody else accountable. He gets it to the guy's face. And so you had kind of that good cop, bad cop. Who's going to play bad cop right now to get the Kansas City Chiefs on the right track?
So often, RC, and I love that point, you get to this point in the conversation, or the question is like, can they fix it and how do they fix it? I think one of the things is, absolutely, the pass game should go through Rashee Rice. No longer Travis. Not that Travis no longer is a part of it, but they should run their pass game through. Hearing Travis's comments, that aligns with the tape. It's not just one person right now anymore. They got issues, certainly the tackles and the pass catchers, but this is what it looks like for everyone to take their turn. So they are basically running a double team front side. There's 2 guys front side that they have to go get. That right guard climbs up and now is responsible for both of them. Somebody on the backside did not get to their responsibility. If that guy does, it's a huge run. Travis goes in short motion here. They're gonna run what we call one back power. Everybody front side, down block. Backside guard is gonna pull, kick out the end man on the line of scrimmage. Well, we gotta get to the backers. Again, now Travis is left with 2 guys. he's got to make a decision. He chooses the backside guy instead of the front side guy because somebody didn't get to their backside guy. If they do, Pacheco's hitting his head on the goalpost, but they don't, and it's a 1-yard run. Then you get the 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. It's zone coverage. I don't need you to route someone up here, Rashee Rice. Okay, he's going to run down. The flat defender widens. The guy gets some depth. It's 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. Just stand there and give me your eyes right now. But he's going to put his foot in the ground like it's man coverage and try to run away from nobody. And then you see that interaction between him and Patrick are like this and that. That's what it is right now. Again, tackles have issues. There are drops. One play. 10 guys do it right, one person makes a mistake, it's a 1-yard gain. The next play, 10 guys do it right, another person or a new person doesn't do it right, 2-yard gain. Next play, 10 guys do it right, and a new person takes that responsibility of messing the play up. So part of me sits there and goes, we got to fix that. Part of me goes, they're close. Like, they're close if they all get on that same page at the same time.
This is a team that's hosted, the last 5 AFC championship games, right? Like it's week 17. If this is all going on in week 2, they have time to fix it. But right now, do they?
No, they don't. And their problem is much more fundamental than the tape that Dan just broke down. It's their offensive line guys. When you lead the league with penalties on with your offensive tackles, you have no chance to have sustainability for offensive success. And to me, it's a lot of, you look at the right tackle, Jawan Taylor, Donovan Smith, both have been beaten, penalized. And when they go on the road, I'm telling you guys, in the next couple of weeks, this will be exacerbated. When they have to deal with crowd noise in playoff games, it's going to be really difficult. So to me, it's the offensive tackles. And then I think RC made a really good point. When you look at Patrick Mahomes' body language on the sidelines and his frustration, to me, he's boiling over from that lack of accountability, the details that you just showed, Dan. And now all of a sudden, Patrick Mahomes has to get outside his comfort zone and hold players accountable, which instead of just doing his job, I think it's a combination of both those things.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily, to me, even about your comfort zone. It's just about the fact that you've been so comfortable, right? It's not that Patrick Mahomes can't lead in that way. It's that he hasn't had to.
Yeah.
His team's always played at such a high level. But you mentioned the tackles. These are 2 guys you go out and acquire. These were decisions you made in the offseason in order to build your roster. And so now that you're getting exactly what they were before they became Kansas City Chiefs, that's on you.
Right. Donovan Smith was leading the league in holding penalties last year.
Right, exactly.
Right, so it's not a surprise. Are we picking this game? Who do we got in this game? Who are we taking in this game, Bengals or Chiefs? See, I just can't quit the Bengals. I know it's Browning and all that, but the Chiefs aren't exactly going great.
Yo, that Chiefs
Bengals are not scared in there, I'm telling you.
I think the Chiefs defense and what Spags has been able to do, I think you look at last week with some of the confusion, the zones of the Steelers were able to cause, I think that zone blends.
You guys are overcomplicating. Michael Jordan here. Patrick Mahomes is going to let him lose again at home. It's just not going to happen.
Fair enough. They're only 4-4 at home. You believe that?
Yeah.
So it's happened 4 times here, my team.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Hey, coming up, let's stick with the AFC West and talk about was he treated got Ryan Clark, Steelers versus Seahawks. Who you got? Let me guess.
I'm going with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Listen, I love what Mason Rudolph was able to do last week. Some adjustments that they made defensively, I felt like were able to allow them to turn the football over against Jake Browning. And just the way the offense started to work and operate, the RPOs in the run game, giving Mason Rudolph decisions to make at the line of scrimmage and watching him take the right one, I expect this team to play extremely well this week again.
Mike Tannenbaum, Packers, Vikings, who you got?
I got the whole desk to myself. Where did all my friends go?
That's right.
Yeah, I also got the Packers, and here's why. They got the more experienced quarterback in Jordan Love. Jaron Hall is going to be starting for the Minnesota Vikings. As bad as this Packer defense has been, and it's been really inconsistent, Jaron Hall is young, he's small, and I just think quarterback play is going to carry the Packers to a really important win.
A little more experience at quarterback in the Dolphins-Ravens game. Dan Orlovsky, who you got in this one?
The Baltimore Ravens, this offense is clicking, and Lamar's playing at an unbelievable level. I don't know if there's a player, certainly quarterback, that is making more out of nothing than Lamar does on a consistent basis. It's not 2 or 3 times a game. It's like 8 or 9 plays a game.
That's real.
That he just, hey, this play was going to go for -3 or 4 yards, and it's going to be a 15 or 20-yard gain. And then this defense is just spectacular in Baltimore. They're the better and more complete team, and the way that they beat San Francisco last week, I cannot look past.
Let's take a look at that defense. Coordinator Mike McDonald out there doing some good work. How are they going to stop the Dolphins?
So, RC, the really interesting thing in the game for me is The Miami Dolphins basically run the same exact offense that the San Francisco 49ers do. And what I love is we talk about the 49ers or we talk about the Dolphins and we talk about their pre and at snap motions and how defenses have a plan for them. This clip is an example of how well prepared Baltimore is defensively and how they almost play defense like offenses do. So what you're going to get is McCaffrey, you're going to go in motion. You're going to see Achane, you're going to see a Tyreek Hill guy for the Miami Dolphins to do this. Now watch how Baltimore defensively reacts to that motion. They obviously have a very clear plan of how they want to attack with some of their
so right here,
pressures.
so I want you to pause it right there. Look how smart Patrick Queen is here. Patrick Queen doesn't start in his movement until Christian McCaffrey moves. The reason you do that is you know Kyle Shanahan is going to have some sort of pre-snap motion that lets you know when the ball is going to be snapped. As he starts to move, Patrick Queen gets out of his disguise, so now he can hit it on the run.
And so then Patrick Queen becomes a pressure guy, and he's unaccounted for. Now what they do, these are what we call change pressures. Queen is going to be the guy that blitzes off the edge, and then they're going to take their backside defensive end and drop him. That's the change. They change roles essentially because then they get a pressure, but also the coverage still has numbers on the back.
Well, the coverage has numbers, but also you're expecting now that the line will slide this way. This guy is going to play seam flat. So if something goes vertical, he has it. Anything goes out, he has to take it. We have a 3-receiver hook player here, which is tied to Christian McCaffrey at the top. So now Roquan Smith will rotate to the top of the field.
And I love this. Like this picture from an offensive perspective looks like almost what we call a cover 2. There's a flat defender that's out there. It almost looks like a half defender out there. And then you talked about Roquan flowing that way. That guy's the key. Kyle Hamilton is the key because his range and his ability to tackle. I get this ball out in space to an MVP candidate and Christian McCaffrey. I automatically think 10, 12 yards if you're Tyreek or Achane.
And the other piece is, too, though, how all of this is tied to Christian McCaffrey. Think about this. On the motion, we get Patrick Queen on the blitz. Because Christian McCaffrey is going to the flat, now Roquan Smith rotates to the new number 3, and Kyle Hamilton is able to get to the flat to make the tackle by using the sideline.
So what you're going to see is an offense that is going to look very similar, Miami to San Francisco, and you're going to watch Baltimore have a very clear plan of how they want to react to those motions. And if that isn't Achane or Tyreek Hill, I think Baltimore's the one team defensively that feels comfortable with that guy out in space versus those two dynamic players.
What's going to be very interesting about this week is we have two sides of the football that feels like they can dictate to the other. The Baltimore Ravens defensively feel like you have to react to them, and obviously the Miami Dolphins have done that the entire year. I think the thing that the San Francisco 49ers weren't ready for was that the Baltimore Ravens refused to be reactors.
Amen. Amen. They always had a plan for how they were going to handle motion, and that's the first time that we saw a defense do it in that capacity.
It's a big matchup, a lot on the line in this game for both teams. If the Ravens win the game, they will be the number 1 seed in the AFC playoffs, regardless of anything that happens in Week 18. But if the Dolphins win, the Dolphins can clinch the 1 seed with a win in Week 18. If the Dolphins win, the Browns are still alive for the 1 seed. There's all kinds of stuff. So the Ravens, obviously, a lot to play for here with that 1 seed. So Dolphins-Ravens, one of the big games of the week. Here are our picks, which we never like to see this, which is unanimous.
You know what that means?
Yeah, the Dolphins looking good now on this. What do you think about this matchup, Mike T?
Well, I think these guys nailed it. I think it's all about Kyle Hamilton. He is a rising superstar. We saw against the 49ers. And RC, you know great safety play. Post safety, can blitz, cover the slot. He could do it all. And to me, as Dan alluded to, he can play in space with the speed of the Dolphins, one of the very few safeties who can do that.
A little banged up. Kind of been in and out of practice the last couple of weeks. So hopefully for the Ravens' sake, he's on the field.
No, that's extremely important. He is that kind of Troy Polamalu Swiss Army knife for this team because he plays more so on the second level. He's not a guy that you want to be in the middle of the football field. You want to be able to use him in disguise, use him in the run game, bring him on the blitz. And he's such a great player in space, even though he's 6'4". He's vital to what they do, but I still believe it starts with Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen this week. If they can stop the run, make this team one-dimensional, that's when you can get to your blitz package and move Tua off the spot.
And I think Mike McDonald will have a very clear plan of how to handle some of the pass game that we know Miami wants to spread you out and then attack the middle of the field. That means you're trying to throw the ball at a Kyle Hamilton, a Roquan Smith, a Patrick Queen. Those guys are so good at getting to those areas and defending that stuff. I want to see how well Mike McDaniel, the head coach and play caller of Miami, kind of adjusts. The last thing I'd say is this. This is not an Odell Beckham, Nelson Aguilar, Zay Flowers if he plays game. For Baltimore in their pass game specifically, this has got to be an Isaiah Likely type of game because that's how you throw against Miami's defense.
We'll see. Big game. And on Miami's side, Jalen Waddle, one of their great receivers. A move they would make. Meanwhile, huge game in the AFC Sunday as the 12-3 Ravens host the 11-4 Dolphins. This is a pivotal game for both teams. If the Ravens win, they will be the #1 seed in the AFC, have a first-round bye, home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs. But if they lose, the Dolphins are in the driver's seat. They would clinch the #1 seed with a Week 18 win over Buffalo. Also, Miami lost and the Bills win. If Miami loses and the Bills win, that means the Week 18 game between Miami and Buffalo is for the AFC East. If the Dolphins win,
just for the
if the Dolphins win this game, the Browns can still get the 1 seed. There's all kinds of stuff at stake in this game. But what I'm curious about, and we talk about it every week, and it's somebody different every week, is the MVP award at stake in this game.
I don't think that the MVP is at stake. I believe that Lamar Jackson right now, and I've felt this way for a couple weeks, is the leader of the pack at the MVP. I've said it that it's almost like the Heisman in college football. There was moments. He had his moment last week. Tua and Tyreek have certainly a chance this week versus what Baltimore's defense did to San Francisco. I think that it is Lamar's MVP to lose.
Yes.
I think the only person that I don't know.
So it is at stake.
No, because I think
because the other person to me is Christian McCaffrey, though.
No, for me it's Josh Allen. If Josh Allen plays the next 2 weeks like he has this season, and they go on the road and beat Miami in Week 18 to win the division, it's going to be hard not to give Josh Allen.
Josh Allen didn't do a ting against the Dallas Cowboys, right? Last week he wasn't great against the Los Angeles Chargers. But you're saying that if Josh Allen plays well the next 2 weeks, Josh Allen wins the MVP.
I think it's going to be hard.
So Josh Allen has had a better year than Dak Prescott.
Yes.
What?
Yeah,
guys, if he plays,
totally disagree with. Look, I think the answer.
Everything for the Cowboys is roses.
No,
he's gonna account for 45 touchdowns if he plays well tonight.
Hold on a second, guys. A week ago, I did predict Lamar Jackson, but if you go back to the game of the century last Monday night, he was the best football player on the field. And sometimes we have to look at the title of the award. You take Lamar Jackson out of the Ravens, they are average.
Yeah, I agree. Lamar's in the lead right now. I think it's Lamar's to lose. My point is, if Josh goes for 45 total touchdowns, which I think he needs 5 more, and they win the division, given the 85% of their touchdowns are scored by Josh, I think it's going to be hard not to give it to him. I do.
That's probably a discussion for another day. Right now, I do want to put up the picks for Ravens-Dolphins because the Bills are not involved in this. It's all Ravens. Look, you said that Allen was having a better year than Prescott. There's no measure by which that's conceivably true. So we can talk about that another time. That is absolutely incorrect. I'd like to hear one of them. But anyway, we're not going to do that.
Total touchdowns.
Because you are benching 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback Russell Wilson.
Sean Payton says it's a football decision, and they're looking for a spark, and that may be true.
Yeah, we need a spark, so we're going to go with Jarrett Stidham. Well, this was purely a financial decision. First opportunity to move on for Russell Wilson, Sean Payton took it.
I can just assure you one thing. I'm just interested in winning.
Yeah, but the big news, obviously, of the week, the benching of Russell Wilson in Denver, and we've talked all about the way it's been handled and the financial reasons for the decision, everything. But I want to talk about Russell Wilson because you go back a year and a half, right? We were like talking about, well, what can he get himself to the Hall of Fame? Is he already a Hall of Famer? Like the time he has spent in Denver, and I know you were never completely sold on the idea of Russell Hall of Fame, but as the time he spent in Denver, what damage has that done to his legacy?
To clear that up, I've never had. I didn't have a Russell Hall of Fame argument. I had a Russell makes your team an immediate Super Bowl contender discussion. I think when you look at his statistics, his ability to having won a Super Bowl, what he's accomplished in Seattle, I thought he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory for sure. But this has definitely tainted Russell Wilson's Hall of Fame candidacy. On the other side, it's also, to me, tainted him personally. Some of the stories you heard about Russell Wilson, just as a player, some of the things you heard about Russell Wilson and the way that he behaved in the building, whether it was having offices or having his coach around the building, some of those things that we heard once Nathaniel Hackett was fired. Now, Sean Payton comes right in and says, okay, we're not going to do those things. What does Russell Wilson do? He never comes back and says anything publicly. He changes who he was around the building. Sean Payton is publicly berating him on who he is as far as kissing babies, wanting to be a politician and all those things, and still he shows you the professionalism. Now, when you look at the play says if Russell Wilson can go somewhere next year, sort of have a resurgence, there's going to be another conversation about him being a Hall of Famer. He's going to be one of those guys that probably doesn't get in on the first ballot, but does get in. And I think what we've learned about him this year is that Russell Wilson is about the business of football. He's about showing you that in whatever circumstance it is, I can do my best to adjust, adapt, and be something different for the people in my building. And I think that was a huge step for me of not only understanding him, but having more respect for him for what he does within organizations.
And then, RC, to move that story forward to next year, guys, like Baker Mayfield, and we talked half the show about Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson could go start next year. There are going to be a dozen teams that need a starting quarterback. I would put him in New England and say, hey, you got to blow up that quarterback room. Bailey Zappi, you're a grade 3. I'm going to start Russell Wilson. I'm going to draft somebody for the future.
I like that in New England.
Yeah. Or Pittsburgh. What's Russell Wilson with that Pittsburgh defense? There's going to be a dozen teams that need a quarterback. So if I'm Russell Wilson, I say, you know what? I swallow hard. It's disappointing. But you know what? 2024 is right around the corner, and I'm going to see Baker Mayfield resurrect his career. I'm going to do the same.
The legacy is unquestionably negatively impacted.
Sure.
He was a Hall of Fame trajectory the last 2 seasons. I'll say this, the last year of 2022 did not go well. This year has gone well. But you're now having an organization that is basically saying, we are going to admit this is the worst trade in the history of the NFL. This trade and the Deshaun Watson trade right now look like 2 of the worst trades in the history of the NFL. Obviously, the Watson one is a little bit of a, we'll see how it ends. It seems like this one's over.
Yes.
So that is absolutely going to hurt his legacy when it comes to what is he as a Hall of Famer. My issue is like this, outside of, believing it was handled unquestionably poorly. Dude, he was on track for 30 touchdowns and 10 picks this year. That's... We're just moving on from that, and we're just living in this world where that's not really good quarterback play.
It's not. I don't think people are. I don't think that's really the question. No, because I can be honest. When I watch the film doesn't always tell me that Russell Wilson is playing great from the position. Like when you can look at it statistically, you can say those things. But what it is Russell Wilson is doing what he's asked to do, and he's making the plays at a high level in critical football moments,
right,
at least until the last 4 games. Russell Wilson wasn't going to outplay the biases of Sean Payton. Right? And I said it when he walked into the building. I said, personality-wise and schematically, style of play, this is the worst match of head coach, play caller, and quarterback in the entire NFL.
Do you think others have that, though? Like, do you think if Sean Payton had that bias of him, do we think that Bill Belichick, if he's still in New England, is going to? Or Mike Tomlin, if he's still in Pittsburgh, is going to?
First of all, go back to RC's point. I totally agree. Like, it was a matter of if not when. It only takes one. Nathaniel Hackett was like, hey, we could get to the playoffs and maybe the Super Bowl with Russell Wilson. So, Dan, it only takes one in free agency. And that's why, again, you look at Baker Mayfield. He's on his 4th team. But they said, you know what? Todd Bowles, Dave Canales.
But Tannenbaum, the thing with Russ, though, the thing with Russ was, There weren't questions coming out of Seattle, but for Seattle, there was always something on those teams you could point to say this helped Russell Wilson play well. This defense, this run game is the reason Russell Wilson won a Super Bowl. This was supposed to be his opportunity to sort of go out on his own and show people that I could be the reason that an entire organization rebuilds to his glory days. And the 2022 season made people feel, okay, he can't do it at all. Right. And now 2023, to me, wasn't above and beyond to a point where you get the feeling of let Russ cook as he's leaving Seattle.
And that's the key, right? Seattle's decision was, Going to be 35. He's going to want close to $50 million a year. We don't think he's that kind of player. So now, right now that didn't work in Denver, does he go the Baker Mayfield route? Can he build it?
Will he do that? Yeah.
But here's my thing. It's not the Baker Mayfield route because one, Baker was like $12 million this year. Am I right in that number? Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
He obviously Russell's contract is significantly different. I look at it like this. This is why I go back to bringing that question to you, RC, because when the Rams moved on from Jared Goff, it was a massive contract. He's not good enough anymore. Not player-wise, we can't get back to the Super Bowl with him. We want a better player. When the Eagles moved on from Carson Wentz, it was he's not good enough anymore. We can't get back to the Super Bowl with him. That's like the play doesn't align with that theory that he's not good enough anymore player-wise. And so you're going to eat all that money and all those picks off of we don't like you.
Well,
what other teams are.
I don't think so. I don't think Sean Payton is saying, I don't think he likes him, but I can't be sure.
Sure.
I don't think that, but I don't think Sean Payton is saying that that play isn't good play. I think he's saying it's not Super Bowl play. I don't believe the Rams moved on from Jared Goff because they didn't believe he could play. They just thought they could get a better player.
Sure.
And I think that's what the Denver Broncos believe. That guy's not Jarrett Stidham. Let me be very clear.
Yeah, that's
but
the thing.
I think for them, it's let's not be on the hook for that 2025 contract.
Right. They got Matthew Stafford in the Goff trade, right?
Yes.
They knew exactly who they were getting to replace him. The Broncos at the moment don't.
Right, so guys, in 2 short months, we're going to be at the Combine. A dozen teams need a starting quarterback. My glass is half full of Russell Wilson because he is owed $39 million.
Right.
He is going to pay for $1 million for somebody next year because the rest of it is all offset to the Broncos. Therefore,
You think Russell Wilson going to play for $1 million?
He's going to play for 39.
he's going to get 39. He's going to get 49 million.
He doesn't care who's
You
signing the
mean to tell
checks.
me that if the Broncos cut Russell Wilson,
Yes.
they have to
guaranteed.
pay him all that money, and
Yeah.
he can then go to whatever team.
He will sign
cheap?
he will go to another team for the minimum because he's going to get $39 million from the Broncos.
Now, that changes
Well,
the conversation.
yeah. That's a big difference.
Drastically.
That's what I'm saying.
Mike,
So-
you buried the lead.
Well, you were on fire today.
We could get him off the TJ Maxx layaway. That's a different
That's a
thing.
big. Then there's a lot of teams.
So people know what we're talking about. There are offsets in the contract so that any money he makes from a new team, Denver gets that money back.
So he will get 39
Get
million.
39. If somebody signs him for 40, then he gets one more. Right? Right. But
if he makes
that doesn't
38
seem
million
likely.
or less from another team, he makes
Yeah.
39 million next year. So if I'm another team and I'm looking at my options, I say, Russell Wilson, come resurrect your